before you cross the street. Okay, joking over.
No, I appreciate the joking. We want to keep this light today. All right, I have some business I have to take care of before we get started. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. My name is Michael Scanlon. I'm the founder of ClimateCon, and we're doing a series of these events to build up towards ClimateCon, which will be a big conference on January 3rd through 5th here in Denver. We'll be celebrating climate innovation. We'll be highlighting and uplifting some of the solutions and the innovations that are happening in the climate space. And we hope the mayor of Denver will participate. We hope everybody in the community will participate and help make it a great event. So we're doing a series of these events along the way. Today's event is sustainability, Saddle Up for Sustainability. We're going to talk about cycling here in Denver. Thank you to Ms. Bruff for joining us. Can we get a round of applause for Ms. Kelly Bruff, please? Thank you for joining us today. So I wanted to start with just a quick little story, very briefly. How many of you have heard of the nation state Tuvalu? Anyone here know Tuvalu? Tuvalu is an island nation state halfway between Hawaii and Australia, surrounded by ocean, and they're basically counting down their existence. They know that with the rising seas going on, it's just a matter of time. They're moving their nation to the internet, and they're trying to find land, solid ground, where they're going to be able to reestablish themselves. So if the severity of the climate crisis isn't fully apparent to folks yet, the Tuvalu story is one that might help you better understand the severity of the challenges that we're up against. So today we're going to try and talk about one solution here locally that we can address, which is getting around on bicycles more, cycling, scooters, and other forms of mobility. To do that with us today, we've got a couple of great panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Jordan Hall on the end there. Jordan's the store manager of the Tech Downtown Denver. Did I get that right? Tech Bicycle. Trek Bicycle downtown Denver. He commutes every day from Aurora. Yes, that's Ms. Bruff sent us a campaign photo of her on her bicycle.
And it's a Trek.
And it's a Trek. And it looks like a nice bike, I gotta say. Looks like a good bike. Jordan commutes to work every day from Aurora, except when the Cherry Creek Trail is flooded. Like today. And we also have with us Molly McKinley. Molly's the policy director at Denver Streets Partnership. They're doing incredible work. They're a coalition of community organizations advocating for people-friendly streets in Denver. She's got a background in environmental policy, was a founding member of Oats and Spokes, a bicycle advocacy organization in Raleigh, North Carolina. She currently serves on the Sustainable Transportation Subcommittee of Denver's Sustainability Advisory Committee and primarily moves around Denver on bike and bus. So we love that about Molly. Yay, can we get a round of applause for our panelists? Thanks. So with that, let's open it up to a couple of questions from our panel. Molly, why don't you go first? Oh, I love that you guys are going to share the mic. Thank you.
All right, Kelly, you had to know this question was coming today. I solicited some questions from the Denver Bicycle Lobby. In Denver, right? You said no when asked if Denver needs more bike lanes. What's up with that?
I know. I thought the first part of your question would be, but first you said yes, which I did. But this is part of actually how I think we probably all have to be thinking, and that is continually learning. So for me, I've commuted on my bike for 30 years, and I think what got my attention in this last year was I had no idea how bad we were doing it, not killing people on their bikes. And pedestrians. And I'm pro not killing people on their bikes and pedestrians. So I initially said yes to more bike lanes, and then I said, holy smokes, we better do a reset and make sure we're making the right investments and making it safe. Because I not only want to be able to feel safe, but I want everyone to feel safe. And I understand when you're starting, and frankly, even if you've done it for years, some of the activity we're seeing on our streets makes me really uncomfortable. And if I want my kids to be able to ride to school, or all of it has to be improved. So for me, it wasn't a slowdown. It's a let's make sure we're making the right investments and actually achieving our goal of safety. And I don't want to slow our roll to do it. And then I learned, after I said that, I invited more feedback, and people said, I think there's specific ways we can make those investments very quickly, specific intersections that are causing some of the greatest issues, which is encouraging. And to me, that's exactly how the learning probably has to go. But that is a learning process you just observed of a candidate who, by the way, candidates never tell you we're open to learning.
You got all the right answers, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to have every answer.
Molly, any follow-up on that?
It's like a full other question that's a follow-up, but
Okay.
it's related to what you were just mentioning.
Okay.
So you've talked a little bit about needing to reset and pause, especially on Vision Zero. In a moment that feels so urgent, that like makes me a little bit nervous. Can you say more about what you mean?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Uh-oh, I'm very sorry.
It's just this tiny microphone.
I feel, oh, it's the Barbie microphone. I'm pro Barbies.
Here, swap microphones with me.
I'm putting it all back
You're
together.
doing it. Look at you.
It's
You got
back
it.
together. Problem solved.
You're a problem.
Yeah, so that's another good lesson. Every word you say is interpreted in the worst possible manner that it can be. For me, reset meant quickly assess. How are we doing the right things? Are we doing it in the right way? Are we investing? And frankly, I think Vision Zero says to me, we have an urgency to get this right because I don't want to stop biking until we figure it out. The other thing I will tell you is Vamos, I think, is another great resource. And one of the things I love that is really advocated is the piloting, the testing, the tracking of data, and then making decisions about how we make investments. And you can do that pretty quickly, and so I love that too. So let me be clear. It's the speedy reset to make the investments right. I'm going to try to get all my words correct. Yeah, thank you, Mom. Speedy reset.
I love it, and I love that you're being data-driven. I think that's so critical with modern governments. That
Also
we,
a crazy notion.
Yeah, right. That we follow the data. Jordan, you want to go next?
So just fielding questions from customers. How do you plan to kind of integrate bike commuters and sport bikes, sport cyclists as well?
Yeah. You like sport? You mean people who try for fun? Yeah, both. So to me, this is an interesting. I'm going to give you an example based on when you're a commuter. You typically find your safest, easiest route, fastest, and that's the same one you take every single day. Versus if you ride for fun or you ride because you want to get around your city, you need way better navigation, way better options. You actually don't just go north and south. That you may have to, on a crazy day, go east or west, or is it the opposite? Yeah, east and west is great, north and south is deadly. And so to me, that's the distinction of making it easier and easier. But I will also tell you, a lot of sport cycling means you want to be along those trails or on those off-road options. I think this is where we want to think about, do we trail two sides of our creeks pretty consistently to have walkers on one and riders on another? And you know, downtown where we've done this, it's so much nicer from my point of view. I think Cherry Creek could benefit from this significantly. And so I think that's another piece I'd look at to try to see if we could improve kind of that sport and fun cycling.
Excellent, great answer. Appreciate that. Molly, do you have a question for our candidate?
I do. I have so many questions. We you talked a little bit about a neighborhood by neighborhood approach to parking and safety infrastructure. In my experience, a neighborhood by neighborhood approach sometimes leads to piecemeal infrastructure that's not connected and really prioritizes the voices of wealthy homeowners who are able to attend the meetings and know their city council members, et cetera. Yeah. Can you explain what you mean by neighborhood approach?
First, Molly, I'm going to stop speaking in my campaign.
It's on my notebook.
Yeah. Okay, neighborhood by neighborhood approach. For me, what this was really focused on is we're one of the worst single car occupancy vehicle cities in the nation. What? Denver? I think that's ridiculous. And listen, people say, well, it's because we don't have good transit. I promise you, Phoenix has worse transit than we have. And so for me, this was really about neighborhood by neighborhood asking, what does it take to get you out of your car? Not just cycling, but get you out of your car. And we start to look at solutions that might, if people are invested in them, maybe we actually have some success in changing behavior. I completely agree with you with systems and connectivity. It would be like you would never build our highway system neighborhood by neighborhood. And so I don't mean to imply that. I get the connections. The other thing I want to spend a minute on, though, is your point about how good we are at saying no thank you in our neighborhoods. And we're really good at saying no thank you, not just to bike lanes or transportation investments. We're good at saying no thank you to housing that's affordable. And I think we need a mayor that's willing to go neighborhood by neighborhood and say, oh no, we're going to get to yes, and we're going to do it together. Maybe not everybody's going with us, but we're going to figure out how we get to yes on these things, because we have to. We have to build more densely. We have to do it in the right places. We have to do it around where we've made investments in our transit system and our major bus routes. We know this, not just for transportation reasons, but for air quality reasons. Speaking of that, I think we were just highlighted as top 5 worst air quality in the nation now for cities. We have to do it for climate reasons. We have to do it for water reasons. To me, this is part of what the next mayor needs to be prepared to do, and that is, these are the kinds of transitions we're going to make it safe to bike and to walk, and we'll still make sure you can drive your car, but you don't have to go 35 miles an hour on every road that you're on.
Right, right. And I love the collaborative approach. I love that you're looking to bring everybody in and look for solutions, not just try to dictate them from above. I think that's a fantastic mindset. Real quick before we get to another question from our panel, today's air quality, it might be confused as being just kind of misty out there, but apparently today's air quality is poor because of the wildfires going on in Canada.
Yeah.
So the wildfire season begins sooner. It affects us from thousands of miles away. The climate crisis is kind of hitting us every day in the face. Let's get one more question from the panel, then I want to open it up to the audience, and we've got a number of people here that want to ask questions today.
So you spoke about neighborhood by neighborhood, but as the capital city, how are you going to influence other cities to follow suit and follow things like Safety Stop Act and all of the bike laws?
The regional question.
Yeah, I love this question because often, especially in this race, every question we're asked is, what will you do in Denver? And the reality is we could do everything perfectly in Denver. We're not going to improve our air quality alone. I don't believe we're going to address getting our unhoused neighbors to safer, to house and shelter that we need to alone. I don't think we can even address fully our affordability challenge alone. So to me, this is just one more of those examples where we need to be in partnership. We're building a system for a region, not even just for our city. I've had the chance to work with the Metro Mayor's Caucus. Did I lose you? Or am I? Go down, go down, go up. How are, oh, great. Let's just pretend you can hear me. And I sound amazing what I'm saying. For years, I've had the chance, both when I was chief of staff to John Hickenlooper, but when I was the head of the chamber, I partnered with the Metro Mayor's Caucus, which is 38 mayors in the metro area, or 34. And what's amazing about that is this, I think, is a great place to come together and partner and really think about these bigger picture. I took to those mayors my plan to address homelessness. And it was basically in partnership with them, and 7 of them have already endorsed it and endorsed me as a candidate for mayor. I share that with you because I think not only is it critical, but I think my existing relationships will help us have those partnerships and make the kind of investments that allow you to actually seamlessly travel from Denver to Lakewood and not even realize that your bike route transitioned to another city.
Yeah, that's critical. You know, I think most people have no concept of where they're crossing the municipal line. They really don't care, right?
Yeah.
Lakewood, Denver, I just want to be able to bike smoothly across.
Yeah, and safely.
Yes, yes. Thank you for emphasizing that. Let's open it up to the audience. Who would like to ask a question of Ms. Bruff? Stephen.
Thank you so much. I just want to preface this because right now what I feel like the city is doing is building bike lanes and just flexing on the number of roads we're building. And then all of a sudden we see like 4 blocks of bike lane that's just a spur to nowhere and doesn't really connect a system. So we talk about like pausing and thinking more strategically about it. Is there a metric that you believe, such as, I don't know, % bike commuters or percentage of single car commuters, that would more accurately reflect how well we're doing with regards to our bicycle infrastructure and connecting neighborhoods and getting people to actually bike places as opposed to just seeing the fact that there's a protected bike lane?
Yeah, I love this question because the other thing that happens when we make these investments, if you never see a cyclist in it, it just pisses off every car. Am I not supposed to use cuss words? So sorry.
I think we can swear.
Okay. it just pisses off every driver out there, right? That we have taken a lane or slowed their roll. And so some of the things we were talking about, I rode with, on Sunday, a group of us rode and just looked at where you could put counters that can track how many people are coming through on a lane. And you start to have an appreciation for when we built it right and how it's being used. Is the use a scooter, is the use a cyclist, or is the use a pedestrian? And making sure we're making the right investments. And that's a way where you could do that pilot and then use that data to say, this should be permanent and we're going to keep moving in this direction. So I really think we have to focus not just on, we have miles and miles of lanes where none of us would ever take our bike, versus we actually have lanes where we're in them and we're using them. And there's, so I also will tell you, number of deaths on bikes, I think, is part of that count for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that. You know, it does feel like the city's doing a lot, if not everything they can. We're seeing more concrete, what you call those, where you block a lane off and you make everybody either make a left or a right. So I know the city's really aggressively trying to do what they can. Can you kind of address the rumbling that we hear that Denver's done a lot of reports, there's been a lot of studies, but there hasn't been enough implementation? Is there anything you would want to say to that, or how you might handle it differently if you were in charge?
Did you take that out of my book?
Yeah. We're really good at planning, is what I would say. We are skilled at planning. We've got a lot of them. I vote we start implementing. And, you know, I think one of the things that we're not great at in government is we sort of feel like you have to prove every single point before we make an investment. And the truth is, we can do some of these and test them out. And the risk is pretty minimal. And to see, does it work? Does it make sense? And I'll just give you an example. It doesn't have to do with biking, but it does have to do with placemaking. I want you to think about Larimer Square. How many years has that street been closed to traffic? Seriously. And when you look at it, what is the barricade? You would think we just closed it yesterday, right? This is where we can make a commitment that says, I think we're going to keep this one closed now. And we could put in pretty planters and, you know, do the kinds of things you would do to actually place make it. I think we could do the same with testing bike lanes and walkways and say, yeah, that works. Let's put it in permanently now and go.
I love the business mindset. Yeah, you're basically saying what a lot of businesses say, which is let's get out there and try it, and if it fails, we'll learn from the failure. And yeah, there's not enough of that in government. I appreciate that you bring that mindset. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to ask a question? I know that. Oh, here we go. Hang on a second. Introduce yourself. And
yeah. Sure. Hi, my name's Connor Locke, and I moved here from Charleston, South Carolina about close to 4 years ago. And my gosh, it's a huge step up from, especially for biking here. But a question, so I was a big part of the advocacy group in Charleston to create equitable transportation, and something we ran into was, it was interesting right before this, talking about the studies, and they would sink so much money into all these study after study after study, and then with no results afterwards. And I feel like that it was almost a, you know, municipal way to just, okay, we spent all the money, it's just to push it away because they never wanted to actually capitalize on it. So how much of the actual like research and everything is going into this before you say, hey, we need to take an action?
Yeah. Yeah, I think here's what I think happens, having worked for government in my career. I think what happens is people say, well, golly, something could go wrong. And if something goes wrong, we could be sued. And if we're sued, that could cost us a lot of money. And so we should spend some more time studying and sort of making sure we think it's, you know, really safe. And I'm all about safety. I'm all about getting it right. But there is a point, and it's often way earlier than we discover it when you're risk averse, where you got to say you will never have enough information to make these decisions. Like, and I'm going to give you an example. I worked at MSU Denver this last year. Metropolitan State University here in Denver. And this is a public institution, pretty risk averse. And we had a team of us that were setting out to make tuition free for Indigenous students for by the way, the state of Colorado to do it. And you could imagine as we were analyzing it and I was doing the financial analysis, I just kept getting, Kelly, we want more information, more analysis. What's the real risk? What's the high end? And there's a point where you're like, hey, we're not going to know all of that. And we got everybody to tip and say yes, and it is working beautifully. And my point was, if it doesn't work beautifully, we could stop. You could be like, my bad, totally can't do that, back the train up, right? We'll finish the commitment, we've made it, but, and I think you forget you can do that with these kinds of things, where you go forward, and if it's not working, you can back it up and make a different choice. And so you can tell I tend to lean toward action and change, and I don't think I'm crazy risky, but I tend to be able to assess risk for where the real risk is and what is just perceived risk. And I think that will be good for the city.
On many levels, no doubt. Let's throw it back to the panel. I know Molly's got a whole book full of questions there.
Let's go, Molly.
I do, but I was going to ask you a fun question.
Oh, good.
Figured, went hard on the first couple. Tell us about a time when you've really enjoyed biking in Denver. What's one of your favorite routes? What's a favorite commute, a favorite moment? Just give us some feels.
Great question.
I have so many. I'm going to give you a couple. So when I started riding 30 years ago, it really had nothing to do that I was a big cyclist. I had a cheap bike, and I didn't have a lot of money. And I wanted to ride my bike because parking I thought was expensive. It was literally like $1.75 a day. I think this is so funny, right? But gas and parking, I was like, wow, it'll be cheaper for me to ride my bike. And I was riding 12 and a half miles one way. So I had a 25-mile commute. And it was awesome. Like, one, I felt so good saving all the money. But two, I also started to feel great, just the physical activity, the separation from work, the time that it would take me to ride and get home. So it was awesome. And I lived in Southwest Denver, so I basically I'd ride south down, roll all the way in, and you could just fly. Of course, I'm not that fast, but it felt like I was flying to me because nobody else was on that trail. Last summer, when I was deciding to run for mayor, I decided to try to ride every single neighborhood in Denver, which was also amazing. And when you're nice and slow, you get a good look at the neighborhoods. So I got a great look. And you know what I really discovered? So now I'm covering ground I had never seen. A few things really stood out to me. One, just so the unique character of neighborhood by neighborhood, the small little gems, things I had never seen. In like, people would have painted stones, when I would be riding by a park, or it was amazing. But a couple things really stood out. On the west side where I raised my kids, I was like, it is 10 degrees warmer over here. We have no tree canopy. I wouldn't get out of my car either. And I felt the same in Northeast Denver. And it really started to stand out to me where we have terrible sidewalk infrastructure, how hard Mississippi is to cross. Right? All these places that I was riding that I had never been. And it gave me a lot of insight into the improvements we have to make, but also how beautiful our city is.
So you biked every neighborhood in the city.
I did, yeah. I'm thinking I may try to do it every single year, like have a day or, a few weekends in the summer where we all go out and meet and just ride around. And it is fun. I found great little shops and restaurants to stop and eat. It was really fun. Mm-hmm. And I got friends to do it with me.
So I just got to throw this out there real quick. You may remember Mayor Wellington Webb before he was mayor.
He walked it.
He ran that ad about the walking in the shoes. I'm just throwing that out there. Might be a good. Jordan, would you like to ask a question?
First, I love the idea of going around and doing like a community ride, so let's set that up. Cool. This is another one that I fielded from just like customers walking in. There's a large concern about like tint laws for cars and not being able to have driver to cyclist connection. Is that something that your administration would look at or try to address?
Yeah. I think this is also an issue for public safety reasons. And I think it's against the law. Not that we care about the law anymore. I know that's so pre-pandemic. But yeah, it concerns me a lot. My general rule in life on my bike is if you don't make eye contact with me, I stop. Because I'm assuming you don't see me. And so having tinted windows is a huge issue for cyclists. It's also a huge issue for a police officer who's approaching a vehicle and you can't see in. And issues like that we rarely really think about. And so I do think we have to get back to following the rules of the game. I have to tell you a kind of a sad part of this story, though. I know some people who had tinted windows. They untinted them. I think they were probably within the rule. But the reason they untinted them is they found people were breaking their window to steal their car, and they wanted people to see they had one of those bars on their, and so they untinted them because when they saw the bar, they would pass by their car. So if you're not motivated to untint your windows, let that be your motivation.
Excellent. All right, I think we're at about the halfway point here. I see Joseph's got a question. Joseph, here, why don't you go next?
I got one.
James, I'll get you next.
So, being here at Tech Alley, and a couple of months ago, we were talking about could technology or startups or the startup ecosystem help solve some of these problems? When we're talking about bikes and even gathering people around bike rallies and getting together and using, these different bike paths, is there a tech solution or is there a way to engage the startup ecosystem to find solutions for getting people out and using the trails and having a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, I'm sure you know way more ways than I do, but I even think gaming strategies could really work here. I saw a gaming strategy that was used in a village in Africa to get people to get their water from a particular well because they knew it was clean there instead of where they were going to a river. And they used a gaming strategy to get the behavior they wanted, and it was hugely successful. I think we could do stuff like that, right, where we're offering carrots and incentives for people to say, one of the things we were talking about Sunday on the ride, by the way, if you did not ride the wrong way on Broadway when it was closed, like it just felt like the most devious thing I have done in a very long time. I was also so stressed out at every intersection. I was like, seriously, don't we have to stop? But the gaming, I totally lost what I was, the counters that, currently count, we got to look at one of them in the bike lane, and they're pretty expensive to put in, and they're fixed. And so one of the things that came up was, these magnetic that can attach to a pole, they're movable, they can do counts for us. And you could probably, to get the behavior you want, even start to say, if you register and are going across those, like maybe we say, if you write in this much and we register you as writing in, you're eligible to win a fancy Trek bike or something. Or an e-bike maybe might even be more appealing. I think there's ways technology could help us think about how do we get the behavior we want, where people are like, I'm totally willing to get myself entered in a drawing and win some stuff. Or
Excellent. James, you said you had a question?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think you have amazing charisma. So kudos to
well,
you.
thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned you're about action, and you're part of this college where you got them off the fence to actually take action. So first part of this question is, what's the difference in that environment, school, where I think it'd be kind of the same as government? So is it the same or different? That's one side. Second is, what do you think would be the most effective to get past that in government?
Yeah.
Where you're actually making decisions and moving forward?
Yeah, I love this question. I actually think higher ed is more risk averse from my observation. I haven't worked in it than when I've worked for the city of Denver. That said, I'll give you another example. When I was the deputy chief of staff, I was responsible for trying to deliver the 311 system. We didn't have it. And we had a team of about 30 employees working on it. And there had been a team before me for 2 years trying to get it done and weren't making progress. And so the mayor asked, would you come over and see if you could deliver it? I promised it in the next 9 months, so could you? And I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And so one of the first things I did is I just asked the team, what's your greatest fear, right, as we're trying to do this? Like, what worries you? And what was interesting is they had a fear for their job. If we deliver 311 and I don't need to answer the phone anymore, and that's what I do, am I going to lose my job? And I was like, that's a legit concern, right? I would go slow too if I thought the other end of this was bad news. So what I did is I told the employees, tell you what, I'm going to guarantee you won't lose your job because of 311. And I even gave them a letter in writing. I said, listen, if you're a poor performer, it's a different issue. But strictly for 311, you will not lose your job. We'll do it through attrition. The city's huge. I promise you, we can wait for someone else to quit and we'll move you over there, right? But you will not lose your job with the city. We delivered that project in 7 months. We went live the minute we did it. I share this with you because, you know, being risk averse often has real reasons that you're hesitant to do something. You're fearful that you're going to be blamed or get in trouble. And I think that's another strategy where leadership can say, I'll take full responsibility for the decision we're about to make. So if we go live with a, you know, bike lane and something happens, I'll take responsibility, right? This isn't going to be on you as employees. Or I'll remove your fear of what bad thing might happen. And I think that's human nature. I think maybe in government we're just not as good at recognizing that we can remove that fear for our own team. And my experience is employees are as interested in making progress, improving your lives, as everybody else. They just need to be given permission to do it. And frankly, they have fabulous ideas often about what we should be doing differently. I'll give you an example. On my ride-along, I asked the police officers that I met that evening, if you could do one thing different downtown to make it safer, what would you do? Every single one of them said, could we please change the let-out time for bars? I just want to be clear. We all know this has been a problem for years and years and years. Every officer said, if you could maybe stop service at 2 a.m., but let everybody stay. I don't know what you do at 2 a.m., but whatever you would continue to do, you could I just haven't been up that late in a long time. But you could stay, right? The let out isn't all at one time. I use that as an example because our team knows how to do these jobs. And if we listen and jump in and say, let's change it. What is the risk? For goodness sakes, today, almost every weekend, something goes terribly wrong in that let out. I'm like, whatever we do next is probably going to be better. So let's risk it and just try it. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I love that mindset. Panel, while you think of the next question, I want to take care of a little business real quick. A couple of folks I have to thank, and I'll make sure we get your question in as well. First, I want to thank Tech Alley Denver. Tech Alley Denver puts this on every third Friday of the month. These are open. They're free. If you're a business owner, this is a great place to come and get your business, get some exposure for your business. And frankly, they're always fun. I want to thank the Escapists for letting us be here today. This is an escape room, you guys. You should come here sometime and try it out. See if you get stuck back there, if they let you out. And I want to make sure we thank Ghost Print is in the house today doing composting for us. Yay. The idea with the name Ghost Print is to reduce your footprint. And they do all kinds of fantastic stuff in the area of composting. And I just want to make it clear that if you sponsor ClimateCon, we'll get you great coverage. All right, so let's hand it back to the panel. Molly, you got a question for them or anything?
I do. Kelly, will you put a protected bike lane on my street? I'm gonna give you more time. So, but this is the place that it comes from.
Where do you live?
So I live in Capitol Hill, very dense neighborhood in Denver. Lots of people who live there already ride bikes. Lots of potential for mode shift in that neighborhood in particular. In the Denver Moves bike plan, one of the many, many plans that we have planned in Denver, many streets, north and south, you talked about knowing the north and south, there are kind of sketchy routes in Denver, especially in central Denver. We're planned for some protected bike lanes. People like me were so excited that I wouldn't be sending it down the middle of these one-lane, one-way streets on my bike. I can go kind of fast, but like still a little bit sketchy. And so that doesn't make it easy and safe for people to get to the school on my street. So this project didn't end up moving forward, a protected bike lane, because of the concerns about parking. Can you talk a little, which I think in my experience in working in bike advocacy in Denver for the last 5 years, parking is the biggest barrier to having accessible, safe, particularly protected bike infrastructure. Can you speak to how you might address parking concerns, maybe manage parking better in the city? Tell us what you do and if you'll give me a bike lane.
If I could figure out how to manage parking, I'd be, doing something way better than running for mayor. This is such a challenge, and you've picked a neighborhood where alternatives are probably tougher for us to find. That said, in other cities we know even being able to park your car a couple blocks from your house sometimes can allow us, right, where you say we're going to create parking over here and we're going to allow then that street to be able to have a protected bike lane. And we may have to do things like that because I do recognize anytime I visit a friend in Capitol Hill, there is no place if you drive to park. And so I get it's a real issue and real tension today. And I think as we're making this transition, as we're recognizing maybe we need less cars, every driver in our house maybe doesn't need a car, we're still in a transition to it. And I think as we're in that transition, this tension is probably its worst moment in our history. And so I really do want to give you your bike lane, Molly, but I'd like to work with the...
Day one or?
Yeah. I predict in my first week, you shall have... Yeah, I shouldn't do shit like that because it's like just joking.
All right, well, I'm done here.
Just joking, yeah.
I got what I need.
What I predict in the first week, you and I are going to meet with your neighbors and say, how do we do this? Because we got to get there. How do we get to yes, and what does it look like? And how do we figure it out together? There has to be a way we can figure it out together. And it's going to go great. It's going to be amazing.
Jordan, you want to go next, and then we'll get John Paul next?
I don't have another question, but just to follow up, like what about parking protected bike lanes and using, like leveraging those so they get their parking, we get protected. So just throwing that out there. You have the question, right?
Here, you take this one.
Hi, John Paul for Littleton Big Life here. So I got a question on regards to recreational as well as like commuter bikers. So is there any possibility that we can increase the repair stations that are around to increase that? You know, we pack our own stuff in our own bags, but if we have the repair stations more around, we have the ability to go further, if you will.
Yeah. I think this is such an important issue. Here's one thing I do love about cyclists. Anybody who is stopped on the street when you ride by, the first thing you ask is, you got everything you need? And we will stop and give you whatever we've got that you need to get yourself back up and running. And I do love that. My hope is we could keep that ethic and that value. But I think this point about repair stations, is a good one. I hadn't thought about it as much. My bigger beef is, could you just give me a safe place to put my bike? Because I ain't leaving it out there. And listen, the more you ride, the more this is a serious issue. Even if I have a good lock and it ain't working. Half of your bike will be gone when you come out of that building. And so one of my big beefs is I believe we should be able to take our bikes into almost every building. I do. And I feel strongly about this. And I'll be honest with you, almost every building I've been in the city of Denver has allowed me to do it. But do you want to know which one?
Yeah.
The city and county building. Now remember, I commuted on my bike for years, and I took my bike into that building, into my office, and I parked it there. I went in to last summer meet with a member of council, and I rode my bike, and I had my lock, but when I got there, I was like, oh no, there's not even covered parking. By the way, the Webb building doesn't even let you take your bike down where city employees put their bikes, where they'd be safe in that parking lot. And so in both instances, when I went in for meetings, I called the person to say, I can't park my bike out on this street. Like, I can't do it. And so in both instances, they came up with a solution because they worked in the building. In one particular, when I was meeting with the council member, we got to his office and he said, what are your highest priorities? Climate's really important to me. And my answer was, people can bring their bike into the building. But I want you to think about, this is a building with the widest hallways you ever seen ever on the planet. Like, these hallways are huge. That you could easily park hundreds of bikes in those hallways and nobody would have trouble getting around or going to their meetings. I think about jury duty as an example. We should have safe parking for bikes throughout our city. And I think we just haven't thought of it like that. And as mayor, I would start to not only now think about repair, but I would think about where you can actually put your bike, that it's safe no matter where you're going.
I love it. It'd be great to have a mayor who had that cycling experience. Anybody got a question they want to throw out? We got one over here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to go around the cameras.
So first, not necessarily a question, but just a comment. And I'm Stan Polatsky. I'm also on the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee. And Molly mentioned about the parking issue. She and I were both involved with some projects that went in southeast Denver, on East Jewel and East Dartmouth. And it involved eliminating parking out of neighborhoods. And of course, the community got involved. You thought the world was going to come to an end. There would be gridlock. There would be total chaos involved. Well, the infrastructure went in with minimal concessions made by Dottie. And 2 years later, the lanes are still there, the bike lanes, and everybody is getting
Everybody's
used to it.
fine.
And several positive things happened. By putting in the bike lanes, it narrowed the traffic, the lane of travel. So the speeds have slowed down. There's also, I think, fewer amount of cut-throughs going on. So it can happen, and there were some concessions, and life went on. Along with that, I think about those folks that do the recreational riding, called interested but concerned, but I call them hesitant, okay?
Yeah.
Now, the neighborhood bikeways, which kind of is a bike streets, Vamos type of thing, it's really making good strides in Denver. And in the complete street guidelines, I believe the range of speed on a neighborhood bikeway is 15 to 20. I know the default speed has been lowered to 20. For neighborhood bikeways, I think we should recommend and enforce a lower speed limit. Not that everybody's going to follow it, but drop it to 15 or maybe even 10. Because I think someone who's just a casual bike rider is still uncomfortable with a vehicle going at 20. 15 is different. 10, okay, it's in a neighborhood. What are your thoughts? And, and we talked
Yeah.
about this on a ride, and with
Yeah.
moving forward with the Dottie executive director, whoever's going to be in that position. So,
Yeah, I'm open to the discussion today. We require, 20 miles an hour at a school zone. It'd be hard for me to defend, that you can go 20 in a school zone, but 10 when you're, 3 blocks from the school zone. So I think we'd have to think about what makes sense to try to slow everyone down. I will share with you, I saw a new sign someone has produced for Kelly Brough for mayor. This is a true story. It's a beautiful star. If you haven't, you're gonna have to look for it around the city. I hadn't seen it until this last couple of days. And someone complained to me that it was too small and they had to really slow down to read it. That's part of my strategy now, to slow everybody down. My signs will be so small, you're like, what? I gotta go way slower to read what this chick is trying to tell me. Just a little humor. We have work to do about what's the right speed limit and frankly, Jewel and Dartmouth are 2 great examples of, that's not a parking problem. Y'all are gonna be fine.
yeah,
Y'all are gonna be fine, yeah.
we're resilient, and we'll figure out how to make it work.
I'm going to ask about micromobility.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean like shared scooters, shared bikes.
Yeah.
Because Denver was like the first bike share city in the US, 2008 with B-Cycle. And now we have 2 private operators. But what I've noticed, this is my industry, is that the cities that have the most robust systems, New York City Bike, Boston has bikes, Chicago, there are others. The city is actually kicking in and subsidizing some of those systems. And I was wondering if that's something that would be on the table.
Huh. That's interesting. First, I'll let you know, I was chief of staff in 2008 and got to be part of the effort to be the first city who moved into B-Cycle, and it just felt so great. And part of it was, to be able to show ourselves we could get around without cars during the Democratic National Convention and start to change our behavior. I'll be really honest, no, I think is the answer, for some depressing reasons, but it's not because philosophically I don't think it wouldn't be nice. It's just I think we have a tough road ahead here. I think by all accounts it looks like things are going to slow down in our economy a little. We're pretty overextended today. I think the next mayor on day 1 is going to have to make some decisions. We spent $20 million of our contingency to manage the migrant situation we find ourselves in. We're hitting a cliff in terms of our funding to help people who are unhoused in our city. We've been using ARPA dollars primarily for that. So I say probably not, only because I think some of the challenges ahead. But I don't take it off the table because I think it's, to me, it's an example of like RTD, right? We know we have to subsidize transit options and alternatives if we're going to make them actually work. Today, RTD only receives about 30% of its entire funding from fares, and it's underwritten by all of us. And so I don't see this any different, and would be open to trying to figure it out. I just think we have a financial challenge. I know candidates aren't supposed to tell you that, but I'll try to always tell you the truth.
Appreciate that honesty. Appreciate you being real honest. I've got a question for you. I talked to an e-bike vendor who is alluding to the voucher program that's involved in Denver. I don't know if you want to speak to the voucher program around e-bikes, if you like it, if you want to change it, if you want to continue it.
Yeah, I love the rebate idea and helping support people transition and start using bikes and e-bikes. I think we could probably increase it. And I think I'd like to focus to make sure our communities who are least likely to be able to have access to those alternatives are getting that money first. And so you might see a shift around equity, maybe for me, as we focus on where those vouchers or rebates go.
I think that's a great answer. Do we have any questions from the audience? I think we've done a pretty good job. I think everybody's had a chance to speak here so far. Stephen's got another one. Sure, do it.
All right, so as you know, Colorado has a reputation for being a very healthy and outdoorsy state. Why is it that for the last 4 or 5 years we have not had a pro cycling event come through?
Yeah, this is a sad state of affairs. So when I was at the Chamber of Commerce, I got the chance to be part of the deal that brought the first U.S. pro cycling here. We even put money into the deal because it is a fabulous marketing about who we are. The healthiest, most active state in the United States. We're not actually all of those things, but remember, part of the Chamber is aspirational and selling a brand. We are still, by the way, the leanest state, and we are the most active. Those two things are pretty accurate. Yeah, that is awesome, isn't it? And the reason this is cool, though, is those two things mean we often have less cost in terms of our healthcare needs. And although I will say this, the cost of what we pay for healthcare does not reflect that. So I don't understand how it all works, but maybe on another forum we'll figure that out. But it went away, I think, because, you know, underwriting the cost of it, figuring out how you pay to bring a cycling event to the United States. We're competing against world events that are incredible. That said, we did have the women's event most recently. And one of the things that I talked with the team about who was building that event was this challenge of, why don't you pay the same purse to the chicks that you pay to the dudes? And let's tell them we're also doing an equity event around gender, and they did just that. And I was extremely proud to see us host a sporting event for women that had the same kind of purse that a sporting event for men would. But it really is about underwriting and people, you know, corporations willing to put their money in. We're a lot of small business in Colorado, and it makes it more challenging. That's the truth.
Yeah, so you're basically saying the pro races don't make money, huh? I mean,
yeah, they really don't. It really is a marketing strategy and positions companies, and we had some good companies who helped. But I think today we only have maybe still 10 Fortune 500 companies in our city, and that's who typically has the kind of resources to underwrite stuff like that.
Right, right. Any other questions from the audience here before we move into the conclusion phase? I'd like to give our panelists each a chance to kind of wrap it up. If you have any last thoughts or conclusion you want to give to our candidate to send her home with?
Some words of wisdom?
Yes.
I did not prepare for this segment. Yeah, don't envy your schedule. I would just, you know, say that there's lots of folks in this room who ride bikes, but there are many more people in our city who ride bikes because it's the most affordable way for them to get to all the daily destinations that they're trying to get to, and they're not the people that show up at public meetings. They're not the folks whose voices are most represented, and so I hope when you're making decisions that those folks' voices are in the back of your mind as well.
There's just a couple things I want to say in wrapping up. The first is that we're going to produce a white paper based on what we've heard here today and some of the other suggestions that have been submitted to us. We'll get those to the mayor, and we hope that those will be considered. I'm going to throw down a challenge with ClimateCon. I predict that in 3 days in January, we will do more for the climate than the United States Congress will do in all of 2023. All right? So you go ahead and fact check me on this.
I think that's a safe bet, unfortunately.
Go ahead and fact check me on this one. Watch what Congress does this year, and then come January 5th, see what we've accomplished. And one last thing I want to say, I want to thank Ms. Bruff for joining us. You're a true A-lister. You really lifted this event up, and we really appreciate you coming. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful. Thanks for the great questions.
Can we get a round of applause, please? Thanks so much. All right. That went pretty well.